You are now allowing your feelings, I guess I should say, to dictate an accusation of a family that largely, by all evidence available, embraced you. What an unbelievably ungrateful person you are.
Oh my God. She never realized she was supposed to curtsy before the queen. So that's, well, what a difficult, I mean, how difficult must that have been? To have to curtsy before the Queen of England? My God, how humiliating. You know, like every other human who curtsies before the Queen of England or bows before the Queen of England? Can't believe it. Just crazy. Crazy stuff.
I think she's making it up like Jussie Smollett. I think somebody said something completely different in a different category, and she's using it now to go make people feel sorry for her.
So apparently to American conservatives, there is nothing more patriotic than supporting the British royal family. No, I'm not joking. This is the logic that has swept the American right after Meghan Markle and former Prince Harry, is he still Prince? I don't know, gave an interview to Oprah where they discussed various things, including lots of racist microaggressions against them by the British press, also some outright racism as well. And you guys know I like to be thematic, so even though I am an Irish person born in England, I've got my England rugby shirt on for this video. But in this video, we're going to talk about the American conservatives' reaction to this stuff, talk about how British people can't handle criticism of being racist, and we're also going to talk about how this royal family, which Ben Shapiro seemingly thinks is good, has lots of problematic aspects, including contemporary racism, but also historic links to the upper echelons of the Nazi Party in Germany. And of course, as most of you expected, but might not know in detail, the British royal family were directly involved in the transatlantic slave trade. Now, before we go any further, recently YouTube demonetized my entire channel, supposedly for bullying. What had actually happened is I'd been mass flagged by some community or some fans. Thankfully, after bigger creators like the Humanist Report, the Serfs, Carl Kulinski, and Wowshi retweeted the tweet, YouTube went back on its policies, but it's shown me how fragile this is as a source of income. So if you want to support my work continuing for the future, regardless of what YouTube do, please consider becoming a patron. If you want to join our growing community, please check out the Discord and the subreddit in the description. And if you want to follow me personally, check out @the_Kavernacle on Instagram and Twitter. And also u/TommyCahill1995 for my personal Reddit. So yes, all that drama has been very stressful. Also, we're chugging along to 30k, slowly but surely. If you guys want to see another chocolate orange, that's what you have to do. Get me to 30k. Each orange represents another 5k. Wouldn't you want to see a lovely new one added to this pile? So let's start with Ben Shapiro, a patriotic American conservative, because as we all know, conservatives are the most patriotic Americans. What does he think about the interview with Oprah by Harry and Meghan? So he says, imagine being Prince Philip, fighting the Nazis, helping preside over the UK during the Cold War and the economic struggles of the 1970s, and now watching your spoiled grandson basically call the institution to which you have silently devoted your life as a vile repository of bigotry. Now, the only true part about that is Philip did serve in the Second World War. He also did have ties to the Nazi Party directly, but we'll get back to this tweet later. But I also find it funny that he thinks the royal family aren't bigoted at all. So let's go into some more tweets. So pretty good metaphor for Western society. Piers Morgan got a lot of complaints for downplaying everything that Meghan said, and Ben was saying pathetic. Also said, if we accept Queen Elizabeth as our monarch, will these two go away? Now, is that really how much you hate them, you patriotic American? You're willing to have America restored to British control? Also said, the real victims are actresses who become princesses, whine to Oprah about their difficult life as royalty, from a 14 million estate, issue complaints to broadcasters about those who criticise them, and get those people fired. I don't remember Harry and Meghan ever doing that. It was the British public who did that. The true villain is Prince Harry, by the way. So Ben Shapiro basically thinks Prince Harry is a traitor to his family. Now, you'd think an American patriotic conservative would probably like someone leaving the royal family and telling everyone how bad they are. But to these patriotic American conservatives, apparently that makes you the villain. So Ben Shapiro also discussed the allegations of racism by Meghan on his show. So let's watch this clip quick.
Oh my God. She never realized she was supposed to curtsy before the Queen. So that's, well, what a difficult, I mean, how difficult must that have been? To have to curtsy before the Queen of England? My God, how humiliating. You know, like every other human who curtsies before the Queen of England or bows before the Queen of England? Can't believe it. Just crazy. Crazy stuff. And that's when the penny dropped and she was about to learn of the predations of the royals. Okay, well, by the way, it's not all on Meghan Markle. Harry's the actual villain of this piece. Okay, Harry grew up with these people, and now he's just dumping all over his entire family. Harry's a bag of garbage. Harry is terrible. Harry was Captain, I'm going to dress up however I want to dress up. I'm going to go to Las Vegas and get naked and smoke pot on the basis of my royal heritage. And then he's like, and you know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to take my entire family. I'm just going to drive up this bus over them, back up the bus over them, because my wife, who wants to be a famous actress and wasn't very good in Suits, now she wants it. So I'm going to go right along. The real villain here is not even Meghan. Right? Meghan is whatever Meghan is. Harry is the one who's the villain. It's his family, right? So whatever I think of Meghan, I think twice as badly of Harry. Okay, so then Meghan Markle starts talking about how difficult, she starts talking about how racist everyone was. And she relates a conversation in which apparently somebody asked how dark her son's skin would be. Now, this would be an excellent time for Oprah, being the interviewer, to ask, okay, can you name a name? I mean, that would be, if someone says something as overtly racist as, how dark is your son's skin going to be? First of all, what kind of stupid, I'm just going to say it, I don't believe that happened. I don't think that happened. Honest to God, I don't think it happened. The reason I don't think that happened is because no one says anything like that. That's a ridiculous question. How dark is your son's skin going to be? Like, beyond, like, the racism of it, the actual stupidity, like the human stupidity of having to ask that question. Do you not know what biracial children look like? Like, that's what? Okay, so I don't believe this for a second, but here she is saying a thing I don't, plus she's maybe it's true and she's such a bad actress that I can't even tell that it's true. That's possible too.
So basically, Ben Shapiro's logic is that he doesn't think people are racist in the way that they'd ask about your baby's race when you're a biracial couple. Now, this guy claims to be some sort of intellectual, but it's clear he knows nothing about the royal family. And why I hate people like Ben Shapiro in particular is that they think they're so smart they have to have a massive opinion on everything. Clearly doesn't know anything about the royal family if you think they're so beyond reproach. There's no way anyone in that massive family could be racist, like I said before, despite a lot of them having ties to the Nazis in the 1930s. I also love how he seemingly finds it problematic that Meghan didn't curtsy to the Queen. Again, are you guys patriots? Why would an American have to curtsy to the Queen? Now, before we go into talking about how the royal family are both racist now and racist in the past, I also saw an interesting Charlie Kirk clip where he also complains about this stuff and also talks about Prince Harry's manhood. So let's watch this clip as well.
Feels like a safe one. Meghan, you are now allowing your feelings, I guess I should say, to dictate an accusation of a family that largely, by all evidence available, embraced you. What an unbelievably ungrateful person you are. No gratitude. Perfect leftist. No gratitude. He's using it now to go make people feel sorry for her. Now, what bothers me the most about all this is actually not Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. We know Prince Harry is a metrosexual beta male and really is lacking in almost all testosterone. And we know that Meghan Markle is a tradition-destroying leftist who's self-indulgent and all. We know that. That's not exactly breaking news.
So obviously pretty disgusting, and also doesn't know anything about the royal family, saying that by all accounts they embraced you, Meghan, as one of their own. Yet also I love that he calls Harry a metrosexual beta male. Now, in the image of masculinity these guys love to talk about, Harry would be a perfect candidate. He did 2 tours of Afghanistan in the British infantry, and then he went back again later as an Apache helicopter pilot. He also parties and drinks and does all that stuff. By all accounts, for a conservative in their view of masculinity, Prince Harry would be a prime candidate. And I love that Charlie Kirk, of all people, is calling Harry metrosexual beta male. Even in this weird hierarchy that conservatives construct about who is the manly men, if they applied that to themselves, Charlie Kirk would be nowhere near Prince Harry. But honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if he doesn't actually know Prince Harry was in the military. Now, what is motivating these people? It's obviously anti-leftism, and I also believe racism. The worst thing for a lot of people is to be called a racist. The worst thing is for a mixed race woman to call out anti-black racism in Britain. So these guys freak out. It really isn't surprising at all that these guys would be like this. I guess what is quite surprising is these guys just say they're so masculine and so patriotic and, you know, hate the British monarchy and 1776, so many people tell me, despite me not being British, 1776, shut up, we have never cared about your opinion from England since that date. And then here is, you know, these same guys talking about how great the royal family are. It just makes me laugh. And honestly, nothing surprises me anymore. We always know Conservatives are just full of absolute garbage. But now let's get to the claims about Meghan being ungrateful, potentially maybe making up that someone asked about her baby being black or white. So let's get into something that happened recently when Meghan joined the royal family. So Princess Michelle of Kent. So quick correction, apparently it's Princess Michael. I don't know many women who are called Michael, so I thought it would be like French, like Michelle or something. But that's just a quick correction. So enjoy me calling her Michelle throughout the whole video. Apologises for racist jewellery worn at lunch with Meghan Markle. So let's look at the brooch she's wearing. It's a black person in a gold outfit. So the story goes, Princess Michelle of Kent has apologised after wearing a blackamoor brooch to the Queen's Christmas lunch at Buckingham Palace, attended by Prince Harry's fiancée Meghan Markle, who is of mixed race by virtue of her white father and African-American mother. The royal, who is married to the Queen's cousin, was photographed wearing the brooch depicting a black figure on her coat. As she arrived for the annual gathering on Wednesday, she was later criticised online for wearing racist jewellery. Markle is understood to have met Princess Michelle of Kent at the lunch, but it's not known if she was wearing the brooch at the time. A spokesman for the princess said the brooch was a gift and has been worn by many times before. Princess Michelle is very sorry and distressed it has caused offence. Not very sorry for wearing it. Not very sorry for someone in the royal family wearing a brooch with a black person on it. And it's not the first time the princess has been accused of racism. In 2004, she reportedly instructed African-American customers in a New York restaurant to go back to the colonies in an argument about noise. So these are the type of people that Meghan Markle had to interact with. And you're telling me you don't believe the royal family were racist to her? We're not just talking about the Queen or something. We're talking about the royal family. Now, this bit made me laugh. Like, I actually laughed out loud when I got to the end of the article. The princess, whose father was an SS officer, denied the incident a few months later in an interview, saying, I even pretended years ago to be an African, a half-caste African, because of my light eyes, and I did not get away with it, but I dyed my hair black. I had this adventure with these absolutely adorable special people, and to call me racist, it's a knife through the heart because I really love these people. So again, she's saying half-caste, which is a racist term as well. So these are the people that Meghan was interacting with. And you seriously think someone whose dad was in the Nazi SS, who has a history of saying racist things, wears a racist brooch, is somehow beyond reproach in terms of talking about the unborn child of Meghan Markle. Now let's dial it back to her father's generation. So let's go to Queen Elizabeth II, the current Queen's uncle, who was King Edward VIII, who abdicated his throne. So a good article on biography.com, were Edward VIII and Wallis Simpson Nazi sympathisers. So Edward expressed his early support for Hitler. Up until it was changed to Windsor during World War I, the British royal family's name was Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, which made clear their strong German origins. The future King Edward, known as David to his friends and family, was particularly close to his German cousins and strongly embraced German culture. When Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party began its rise to power in the late 1920s and 30s, many in Europe, Edward included, applauded the economic recovery of war-torn Germany. In Britain, support for more far-right political parties increased, leading to the creation of the British Union of Fascists by Oswald Mosley. A strong streak of anti-Semitism ran through these groups, as well as the British government and the royal family. Many were more than willing to overlook the sharp rise of anti-Jewish attacks and legislation in Germany, with Edward purportedly telling a German relative in 1933, that it is no business of ours to interfere in Germany's internal affairs, either with Jews or anything else. He went on to add, dictators are very popular these days, we might want one in England before long. The couple also visited Nazi Germany as Hitler's guests in October 1937, 4 months after their marriage, and despite their strenuous objections of the British government, the Duke and Duchess travelled to Germany. While the Duke claimed he was making a trip to inspect housing and working conditions, he likely hoped the trip would burnish his reputation both at home and abroad, and possibly improve Anglo-German relations. His private secretary later wrote that the Duke also planned to use the trip to showcase his new wife, who had not been granted the title of Her Royal Highness, and they were met by massive cheering crowds, many of whom greeted the former king with a Nazi salute, which Edward frequently returned. The Duchess, meanwhile, was met with the royal curtsies and bows she'd been denied elsewhere. They dined with several high-ranking Nazi officials, including Göring and Goebbels, and even visited a training school for the SS. On October 22nd, the couple travelled to Hitler's country home in the Alps, known as the Berghof. Hitler and the Duke spoke privately for over an hour, while the Duchess met with Deputy Führer Rudolf Hess. Some accounts claimed he criticised Hitler, while others maintain he may have given him support. The transcript of their meeting was lost. Now, there's also a secret plan by the Nazis to reinstate Edward as the king if they won the war against Britain, and that is why the British government made him the governor of the Bahamas and moved him far away from Europe, so this plan could never happen. So there you have a living member of the royal family who Meghan interacted with her father being in the Nazi SS. You also have King Edward, who is Queen Elizabeth's uncle, obviously dead, long dead by now, who also had support for the Nazis. And then Prince Philip himself grew up in Nazi Germany, and his sister was married to a Nazi official. So how is it totally unbelievable these guys may have been racist to Meghan Markle when you know the context of that family? And not only the context of that family, the context of that family where you are on a pedestal. You are not criticised like everyone else. You do not mix with everyone else. You have these things normalised. You have all this colonial past, this fascist past, normalised with all the stuff you own, with all your family and everything like that, and all the colonial riches they have, or even wearing a brooch with a black person on it, not realising that's bad, calling people half-caste and everything. Again, Ben Shapiro, Charlie Kirk, do you honestly think she's making up that someone, could have been anyone in that family, not just the Queen, may have asked what race her baby would be? Now, it goes into Ben Shapiro's other points about somehow Prince Philip presiding over the economic turmoil of the 1970s in Britain. Obviously, Prince Philip did nothing during that time because the royal family, as a power, have been pretty irrelevant since Queen Victoria. But that doesn't mean the British royal family didn't used to be very, very powerful and influential in government and colonial policy. So to end the video, I want to share with you how much the royal family were historically involved in the transatlantic slave trade. So a good article by Brooke Newman called Throne of Blood on Slate talks about how involved these guys were. So it starts with Elizabeth I endorsing people who initially brought back African slaves to Britain, but I'm going to skip forward a few hundred years. So during the reign of King Charles II from 1660 to 1685, the Crown and members of the royal family invested in the African slave trade, seeking to bolster the wealth and power of the restored monarchy and supplant the Dutch in the Atlantic trading system. Charles granted a charter to the Company of Royal Adventurers into Africa, a private joint stock company, less than 6 months after ascending to the throne. The charter gave the royal adventurers a 1,000-year monopoly over trade, land, and adjacent islands along the west coast of Africa, stretching from what was known as Cape Blanco in the north to the Cape of Good Hope in the south. The king even lent the company a number of royal ships, including a vessel called the Blackamoor, which is nice because it ties to the brooch, which is a Blackamoor brooch that person was wearing, and reserved for himself the right to 2/3 of the value of any gold mines discovered. Controlling English trade of West Africa offered the prospect of a revenue stream that would enable the crown to gain financial independence from Parliament. Following on from that, in 1663, this group received a new charter explicitly granting the company an exclusive right among English traders to purchase enslaved captives on the West African coast and transport them to English colonies in the Americas. Sponsored by the king's inner circle and politicians and courtiers expecting to use the African trade for personal profit, fledgling companies set out to deliver thousands of African captives to the English Caribbean. And historian William Pettigrew noted that the Royal African Company of England, the company we're talking about, shipped more enslaved African women, men and children to the Americas than any other single institution during the entire period of transatlantic slavery. Again, this is an institution directly in bed to the royal family. So from its founding in 1672 to 1688, James the Duke of York, who was the future King James II, served as a governor of the Royal African Company and was its largest shareholder. James also held the position of Lord High Admiral, which enabled him to exercise punitive power over anyone who challenged the company's monopoly in West Africa or the English colonies. So intimately intertwined was the English monarchy with the slave trade that the company left a permanent mark of royal ownership on the bodies of the enslaved. So also King George III, Ben Shapiro referenced him, America's most hated king. So from 1680 to 1820, Atlantic slave uprisings and a multiracial coalition of abolitionists transformed the British public's view of the slave trade. At the same time, the Crown supported its continuation. Now, you guys might think that is a long time ago, 200 years ago since the last bit of it. But what I want to point out is that the royal family profited off the slave trade, and it's the same royal family still in power today who have an obscene amount of wealth. So their wealth has literally been created through the slave trade, the exploitation of colonies, the stealing of their wealth. It's also been made on the backs of British people and the British poor. And we're supposed to believe, according to American patriotic conservatives who hate the royal family, I thought, you hate the monarchy, you hate the idea of a monarchy, you hate the idea that God chose one family to rule over you. Now, apparently, according to American conservatives, mainstream pundits, people with massive followings, people like Ben Shapiro who are considered titans of intellect, that there's no way the first black royal could be treated in a racist manner by that family. There's no way. Despite the fact that another one of the princess wore a brooch which is named after a royal slave ship, despite the fact her father was in the SS, despite the fact she's used racial slurs, despite the fact this family has real links to the Nazis, despite the fact these guys were all colonialists and served in colonial positions, normally serving as rulers over non-white countries. Just because the empire is somewhat in the past, it still existed until the 1970s, and the Commonwealth is an extension of the empire. The stuff in Ireland didn't end until 1997. I was alive when that stuff was happening. I was alive when there was still like anti-Irish like bigotry and prejudice in this country. But people like to pretend that's all way in the past, and the monarchy have had no role in this. And, you know, they're above everything. And I hope when the Queen passes away, that's the end of it, because Charles is not going to be popular. And I hope one day, in the next 20 years of my lifetime, there will be a strong abolitionist movement so we can finally get rid of the monarchy. Because Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk should agree with me, as people who believe in an Abrahamic God, that this Abrahamic God did not choose this one royal family to rule over the people of England. Unless you somehow are some actually closeted massive royalist, where you do believe your Abrahamic God did choose this family to rule over us. And out of all the royals, Harry seems like the one who's actually evolving. Obviously, they treated his mother awfully. And now, hopefully, with Meghan, he's seeing they're not a nice bunch of people. And the cherry on top of all this stuff is, can you guys please get just as outrage against Prince Andrew? Can the mainstream press please get more outrage about Prince Andrew, who's actually been alleged to have done awful things, and it's seemingly pretty provable? That picture is so damning. Maybe get a bit more mad about that rather than allegations of racism from the first black royal to a family that has a history of racism, even recently has ties to the slave trade and has ties to the Nazis. You know, that is the Queen's uncle who was meeting Hitler. That isn't like King George III, 200 years ago or something like that. So anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Thanks so much for all the support on Twitter and on Patreon throughout this demonetization drama. But if you want to support my work, check out my Patreon. If you want to follow me on social media, Twitter and Instagram @the Kavernacle. Come join the Discord and the subreddit to join the community. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.